Today's daf is Yevamos daf Dalid, and we are 6 lines from the bottom of daf Gimel Amud Beis. Taima de Kosev Rachmana Aleph. Today's daf is being learned Ilu Nishmas Shlomo ben Yibadal Chaim Tovim Reb Chaim Doy. And as a schus refuah shalema for Avadia ben Miriam Leah, Moshe ben Devorah bas Mecha, Shmuel ben Tehila, Elazar Lipa Shalom ben Fega Rachel, Sarah Nechama bas Rus Malka, Baruch ben Rachel, Malka Miriam bas Esther, and Esther Kreindel bas Devorah. Today's that's also being learned the Ilu Nishmas Doiv Berel ben Reb Yaakov David. So we're already holding in the third daf of Masechtas Yevamos, daf Dalid, which is actually going to bring us the first digression of the Masechta. In fact, we're going to digress now for 3+ dafim, where the Gemara is going to discuss Dvarim ha'imdim berumay shalayla, one of the most important sugyas in Torah Shabbat Peh, and that's the sugya of asay doicha loisase. So, asay doicha loisase is something that we're all familiar with. The basic concept is that a person has a mitzvah to do something. The problem is that if he does this thing, which is a mitzvah, he's also going to be over a loisase. So there's a beged that's in front of the person. The beged has tzitzis on it. The beged was also made of shatnez. If he puts on the beged, he's mekayim a mitzvah of tzitzis. But at the same time, if he puts on the beged, he's also going to violate the lav and the Torah of shatnez. So what should he do? Should he wear the beged so that he can be mekayim the mitzvah of tzitzis and pay the invoice of violating the loisase, or no? Being that there's a loisase to wear this beged, he certainly should not wear this beged, although it means that he's going to have to pay the invoice of being mevatel the mitzvah saseh. So that's the question. When a person is faced with this dilemma, do the aseh and be mevatel the loisase, or fulfill the loisase and miss out on the aseh? What's he supposed to do? Not a lot of suspense. Everyone knows the answer. Halacha revacha b'Yisrael zeh klal gadol b'din haseh is doicha loisase. The idea of aseh doicha loisase and the very intense Shulchan Aruch associated with aseh doicha loisase is really scattered throughout Shas. If you go back literally from the beginning of the Machzor, we discussed it in Brachos and in Shabbos and in Erevin, and it comes up a lot in Psachim. It's something that's literally mentioned in Kol HaTorah Kula. But the primary sugya, if you wanted to go to ground zero, literally learn it from the beginning with the Makairis and the Gemaras and the Rishonim, it begins in a sugya tucked away in the first paragraph of Masechtas Yevamos. It's Daf Dalid, it's Daf Hey, it's Daf Vav. It goes into Daf Zay. Now, how are we going to get into the sugya of Aseh Doicha Loisase? So it's going to be the opening line in the Daf. But just to set it up, we've been discussing the first halacha of Masechtas Yevamos, and that is that although it says in the Torah Ki Yeshvu Achim Yachtov Umeis Achad Mehem Ubein Einloi, what's the halacha? Lo Yistia Ishes Ameis Achutza Lijdar. Rather, Yevama Yavay Aleh Ulekacha Lo Leisha. Stating that there are times where even if a brother dies, leaves over no children, the halacha is that there is no mitzvah of yibum with the Yevama. Our Mishnah mentioned the most prominent of those examples of the exceptions to the rule of yibum, and that is when the Yevama was an erva to the Yava. So if Reuven and Shimon are brothers, Reuven was married to Shimon's erva, then Reuven died. The halacha is Shimon does not have a mitzvah to be miyabim his erva. Not only doesn't he have a mitzvah to be miyabim his erva, he doesn't have a mitzvah to be miyabim the tzaras erva. Not only the tzaras erva, but even the tzaras erva at soifa oil. And the Gemara daf Gimel Amud Beis brought a brayso that stated the makar to the halacha that there's no yibum by an erva and by a tzaras erva and by a tzaras erva. It's learned out from Sukkim in the Torah. It's learned out from the parsha of the Arayos. It says regarding the erva of achois isha, a man is not allowed to marry his wife's sister. Now, just to be clear, the only time it's also for a man to marry his wife's sister is while he's married to his wife. So that if a man is going to be married to 2 sisters at the same time, that's what the problem is going to be. However, if a man was married and then his wife died, he's allowed to likatchila marry her sister. But regardless, there's an erv in the Torah called Achos Isha. And when the Torah mentions the erv of Achos Isha, it says, V'isha el achoisa loisikach litzrar legalois ervasa aleha b'chayeh. And the Gemara held that the word aleh is extra. And really, if you think about it, what's the word Oleh saying? It's saying this point that we just made, that the only time there's an erva of achos isha is if the person is married to both sisters at the same time. It's the isha lachoisa loisikach litzar legalis ervasa aleha. It's if you're married, then you can marry your wife's sister, because then the sister is going to be a tzara aleha. But the Gemara's kasha is that the very next word says the same thing. It says bechayeha, which also means that the only time the erva of achos isha is in effect is if both women are alive at the same time. So why then would the pasuk have to say olel? It's extra. It's mufna. Says the Gemara. It's coming to teach us that there's no yibum by an erv. Where do you see an olel? Yibum, because in the parasha of yibum it says Yevamos yavoy aleha. So olel means yibum. Olel here in the parsha of Achis Isha means Yibum, and what it's coming to say is that just like there's an erva called Achis Isha, Shaloi b'Makom Mitzvah, b'Makom Mitzvah, b'Makom Yibum, there's also going to be an erva in Achis Isha. Says the Gemara, how do I know Tzara? Because in that same pasuk it says Litzrar. How do I know Tzara? Because it doesn't just say Latzur, but it says Litzrar. How do I know all the other arayas? So the Gemara says, once I know Achis Isha, I'm going to know all the other arayas as well. But one thing is clear: the fact that there's no Yibum by an erva is learnt out from a pasuk, which means b'milam acherim, that had we not had a drasha, had we not had a pasuk to explicitly state that there's no yibum on an erva, I would have thought that there would be yibum by an erva. Meaning, if I would have applied all the klolei psak and all the ideas that we have from Torah Shabbat Peh of how to go about situations, you would have thought that if an erva falls the yibum, of course you do the mitzvah. Are you going to tell me there's an isser erva, she's an achos isha? I know. There's also a mitzvah of yibum. It's only because of the fact that we have a drasha, it says oleh, that teaches me that there's no yibum b'makom erva. It's with that diak that today's daf is going to begin. Zok Gemara, a classic Shabbat classic daf. The only reason there's no yibum by an erva is because the Torah wrote an extra word. The Torah wrote the word oleh in the parasha of achos isha. But had the Torah not written the word oleh, I would have thought achos isha miyadma, that there is yibum by an achos isha. My time, what's the reason? Meaning, why would you think without any psukim that there should be a mitzvah of yibum even the makom erva? Presumably done rinan asiyaseh the dachiloisaseh. Because although it's true there's an isser achos isha, but achos isha is a loisaseh. Yibum's an assay, and we know the rule, like we just spoke out, that assay is doicha loisaseh. When is it true that assay is doicha loisaseh? That's a loisaseh greda. That's an ordinary, using that word very loosely, but that's an ordinary loisaseh. Is it true that an assay could be doicha a loisaseh sheyesh by cars? It's true, assay could be doicha loisaseh, but not every loisaseh, only a ordinary loisaseh. But if the loisaseh is a supercharged loisaseh, it's a loisaseh that if a person would violate, he would be chayav kares. That loisaseh is more chomer, and that loisaseh and aseh can't be doicha. So what's the Gemara's kasha? Achos isha is an erva. It's an erva that has a chayav kares. If that's the case, there's no way in the world, based on the gedarim of asay doicha loisaseh, that the asay of yibum would be able to be doicha the loisaseh of achos isha. So in other words, why do I need a pasuk of oleh to teach me that there's no yibum by an erva? It's pashut there's no yibum by an erva. Without a pasuk of oleh, I would know that there's no yibum by an erva. Because at the end of the day, in the best case scenario, yibum's an asay. And achos isha is a loisaseh sheyesh by kares, and an asay is not doicha a loisaseh sheyesh by kares. This is the Gemara's kasha, and it's because of this kasha we're going to digress now, and we're going to go knee deep into the sugya of asay doicha loisaseh. In fact, we can even have to wait a little bit for the Gemara to revisit this kasha. We're going to learn the entire daf today, and the Gemara is not going to reference back at all to this question, so we're going to be left with a little bit of suspense to know what the Gemara's teretz is. It's a festa kasha. Why do I need a pasuk of oleh to tell me that there's no yibum by an erva? Of course there's no yibum by an erva. There's an isser erva. And even though yibum's an asay, but erva is a lois asay sheyesh by kares, they an asay doicha lois asay sheyesh by kares. Zok the Gemara. Visu. Usually visu means we're piling on, right? One kasha, visu, and another kasha, the oid, and the third kasha. This visu is really a little different than what it usually is. This visu is more of, we just mentioned asay doicha lois asay, so let's roll our sleeves up and let's talk a little bit about asay doicha lois asay. So says the Gemara, visu. Loisase greda minol on the dach. What's the makar that I say is even doicha loisase? This is a very important gemara. It says in the Torah loisil b'shabbos. It says that a person is not allowed to wear shabbos, and the very next pasuk says v'dilim tasalach. There's a mitzvah to wear tzitzis. So the Torah juxtaposed the loisase of shatnez and the mitzvah's essay of tzitzis. Rabbi Lazar said smuchim. How do you know that you could darshan smuchim in the Torah? How do you know that if the Torah puts two seemingly different halachas next to each other, there's a reason, and we can darshan the reason? Meaning, we know Chazal were given tools to darshan Torah Sheba'al Peh. They were given the right to darshan Torah Sheba'al Peh. When Chazal darshan psukim using droshes, the droshes have a din of a dairaisa. It's very, very legitimate, stating that there's rules of what they can use. Yud Gomor Midah Sha'Torah Nidreshes Behem. There's Lamed Beis Midah Sha'Torah Nidreshes Behem. One of the tools that Chazal have at their disposal is smuchim. If two things are samuch, they're juxtaposed to each other, that means that they're allowed to darshan those two items as if they have some sort of connection. So Rabbi Lazar was commenting on this concept. He said, smuchim and Torah. What's the makar you could do this? He said, from a pasuk in Tehillim, from all places, smuchim lo'ad lo'olam, asuyim be'emes v'yasha. That smuchim lo'ad lo'olam, when things are smuchim, it's asuyim be'emes v'yasha. There's a reason for it, there's a cheshbon to it, and you're allowed to learn psuk. Rav Sheshes said in the name of Rabbi Lazar, it's the same Rabbi Lazar, who was quoting Rabbi Lazar ben Azai. How do you know that if a Yevama would fall to a mukashchen? So what happens if a Yevama falls liyibum? And the Yavam is a mukashchen. He's someone that women would really not want to marry because of certain physical issues that this person has. Now, ordinarily, if the Yavam wants to do yibum, even if the Yevama doesn't want to do Yibum, the Yavam has a right to force the Yevama to do Yibum. But Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said that if the Yavam is a person that's a mukashchin, that there's no way this woman would ever want to marry, how do you know she'ein chais menaisa? That if she's protesting, that she's saying, I don't want to do Yibum, we wouldn't put a muzzle on her mouth, proverbially speaking, meaning we wouldn't quiet her. How do you know that we would hear her out and say, you know what, you don't want to marry this man, that's fine. Shenemar, it says in the Torah, you're not allowed to put a muzzle on the mouth of an ox when he's threshing in the field. The Samachle, it says, the parsha of Yibum. So what's the connection between Yibum and Loisachsim Shar B'disha? That sometimes is a lav in the Torah of Loisachsim Yisha. You're not allowed to put a muzzle on her mouth, and if she's protesting, she says she doesn't want to do Yibum, we hear her out. How do you know that? From Smuchim. And this is Rabbi Lazar, the Shitasai, who said Smuchim and Torah Minayim, because it says Smuchim la'ad li'olam, asuyim be'emes v'yashem. So there's a concept of Smuchim, that if you have two psukim that are samach to each other, we're able to darshan these psukim. Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah darshaned it to teach us a halacha, ironically and coincidentally, in Yevamos, that minayim Yevamos shenaflu fnei mukashrin shein chais menaisa. We know it from the smichos between Leisachs and Shar B'dishoy and Kiyesh v'achim yachdav. So too says the Gemara. This is going to be the makar to the idea that Aseh is doicha loisase. It's from the fact that the Torah wrote the loisase of loisul b'shatnes. And right next to it, it said the Aseh of Gdilim Tasalach. You know it's coming to teach me. What happens if Shatnez goes head on with tzitzis? There's a face-off. I have a beggar in front of me. On the one hand, tzitzis. On the other hand, it's Shatnez. Do I wear the beggar or do I not wear the beggar? The smuchim of Loisul Shatnez and Gdilim Tasalach teaches me that what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to wear it because the Gedilim Tasalach is doicha the loisul b'shatnez. Incidentally, Tosfos asks a very obvious kasha. How did Chazal know to darshan the smuchim of loisul b'shatnez and Gedilim Tasalach that the Gedilim Tasalach is doicha loisul b'shatnez? Maybe darshan it the loisul b'shatnez is doicha Gedilim Tasalach. All you see is that something is going to be doicha the other thing. So how do you know that the drasha is that the Gedilim Tasalach is the superior? Maybe the drasha is that the Leisul B'shatnez is the superior. A very, very obvious question. But either way, that's what the Gemara says, is the makar to asnei doicha loisase. But the Gemara continues. Rabbi Yosef said that people man even though there's a man the Amar, that ba'almo, meaning throughout the Torah, he doesn't darshan smuchim, but the Mishnah Torah darsh. But when it comes to Mishnah Torah, when it comes to Sefer Dvarim, there he's going to darshan. How do we know this? The Rabbi Yehuda b'amaloi darsh. Rabbi Yehuda throughout the Torah did not darshan smuchim. Ube Mishnah Torah darsh, but yeah, when it came to Mishnah Torah, Rabbi Yehuda did darshan smuchim. So no, b'amaloi darsh. How do you know Rabbi Yehuda b'amal did darshan smuchim? Meaning, what's the makar that Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold of smuchim? The time you belong to the Brisa. Ben Azai said, Nemar. It says in the Torah, mechashefa lois v'chaya. So if there's a woman, lav dafka woman, but a man as well, but if a person's involved in kishuf, lo yisachaya. This person's chayav misa. And it says, kol shoichev in behema, mois yumas. It's the very next pasuk in the Torah, that if someone is shoichev in behema, he is mizana with a behema, mois yumas. Said Ben Azai, samchu in yunloi. The Torah juxtaposed, again, smuchim, these two ideas. The idea of mechashefa lo yisachaya and the idea of someone that's shoichev in behema, to teach us something. What? Just like someone that shoichev in behema is chayiv skila, that we know from somewhere else. So to machshefa is going to be chayiv skila. So it says in the Torah, mechashefa lo yisachaya. But what misa does he get? That we don't know. For the fact that it says mechashefa lo yisachaya right next to kol shoichev in behema meisumas, and if someone shoichev in behema is chayiv, not just misa, he's chayiv skila. So too, if someone is a mechashefa, that person is going to be chayiv skila as well. This Ben Azai said, Amalei Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda told Ben Azai. He said, because the Torah put these two things together, you're already muchan umzuman to give this person skila. You have to have a little bit more of a basis to give a person skila. So I said, Rabbi Yehuda, I agree, I'm machshefes chayiv skila, but not for your reason, Ben Azai, Ella, for a different reason. There's two types of kishuv that was singled out in the Torah. One was oif, and the other one was yedayni. These are two different types of kishuv. Ayin Masech Sanhedrin, Ayin Rashi al Torah. These were included, however, in the general idea of kishuv. Why were they singled out in the Torah? Because the Torah wanted to use these as an example, really to teach us about all different types of kishuv. Okay, what did the Torah single out about oif and yedayni? Here's an example. Not if you don't beskilo. Or if you don't is chayiv skilo. It's learned out. So to machshef is chayiv skilo. So Rabbi Yehuda told Ben Azai, I agree with you that machshef is chayiv skilo. Even though it says machshef is chayiv, I don't really know what misa it's referring to, but I happen to agree it's chayiv skilo, but not for your reason. You're telling me skilo because of the smuchim. Smuchim is not enough of a reason to give a person skilo. You want to know how I know it's skilo? Because if you don't were bechlal machshefa, v'yatzma min haklal l'lamed. It didn't just come to teach me that an Oiv is chayiv skilo. It's coming to teach me that every single nechshefa is going to be chayiv skilo, and that's why I know you're chayiv skilo. But what do you see from Rabbi Yehuda? You see, Rabbi Yehuda holds that you don't darshan smuchim. Stating that, the Mishnah Torah and all the darish, but we know that the Mishnah Torah Rabbi Yehuda does darshan smuchim. How do I know that? The Tanam went to the Mishnah. Loisnei adam anusas aviv umafutas aviv. A person is not allowed to marry his father's wife. Meaning, even if his father's wife is not his mother, but rather she's his stepmother, still there's going to be an issa. Stating that, the Mishnah says, a man is allowed to marry anusas aviv umafutas aviv. If a person's father was mizana with a woman, whether he was ma'anis the woman or he was mafata the woman, the halacha is this son is allowed to marry her. Additionally, anusas b'nai umafutas b'nai. A person is not allowed to marry his daughter-in-law. However, anusas b'nai umafutas b'nai, if a person's son was mezana with a woman, whether it was ba'onis or whether he was mafata her, the halacha is he'd be allowed to marry her. So you would have had a havamina that maybe anusas aviv and mafutas aviv, anusas b'nai, mafutas b'nai should be an issue. So the Mishnah noisei yadam anusas aviv, mafutas aviv is not a problem. Additionally, noisei yadam anusas b'nai, mafutas b'nai. Rabbi Yehuda, however, says it's also anusas aviv and mafutas aviv. Then he agrees anusas b'nai, mafutas b'nai is mutter, but he says anusas aviv and mafutas aviv is going to be us. Rabbi Yehuda said the name Rav. I come to Rabbi Yehuda. What's pshana Rabbi Yehuda? So you know Rabbi Yehuda knew it. He smuchim. The pasuk says, "Lo yikach ish as eshes aviv, for lo yigala knaf aviv." It says that a person is not allowed to marry eshes aviv, his father's wife. That we know. And then it says, "For lo yigala knaf aviv." What does it mean, lo yigala knaf aviv? So Rabbi Yehuda darshan knaf shera aviv lo yigala. If there's a woman that his father was mezana with, lo yigala, now there's going to be an issusnos. Says the Gemara, "Umimai de be'anusakse." How do you know that this pasuk is referring to anusas aviv? Doesn't say anything about anusas aviv. So the Gemara says, "Me you love the Quran," because if you look at the previous pasuk, you'll know. You know what the previous pasuk says? It's the previous pasuk is talking about someone that was ma'anis a woman. And then it says, "Yikach ish." So Rabbi Yehuda, you know what Yigala Knaf Aviv means? It means Anusa. You know, I know it means Anusa because the previous pasuk was referring to Anusa, and because the previous pasuk was referring to Anusa, that's how I know that this means Anusa. So we just mentioned Rabbi Yehuda Shita. The Rabbi Yehuda holds as an isser for a person to marry Anusas Aviv umefutas Aviv. The Chachamim argue, the Chachamim hold that it's mutter. How did Rabbi Yehuda know it's aser? He darshan smuchim. What's the smuchim? It says the parasha of Oinis, so as someone that was ma'anis and naira, and then immediately afterwards, so the Gemara says, don't Rabbanon also darshan smuchim? So Rabbanon are going to say, yeah. However, yeah, the samach like the gamer. If it was really smuchim, we would agree. But hashlo is samach like. But the problem is, it's not really smuchim. Why? Because although the Torah goes from the parasha of Oinis to the pasuk that mentions lo yigal knaf aviv, but lo yigal knaf aviv is the seif of the pasuk. It's the second part of the pasuk. The first part of the pasuk is lo yikachish es eshes aviv. So really, the smichos is to lo yikachish es eshes aviv. It's not to lo yigal knaf aviv. Therefore, it can't be that lo yigal knaf aviv is referring to an isser for a person to be mezana with anusas aviv. What then does lo yigal knaf aviv mean? It means something else. And again, ironically, something related to Yibum. The Shemeres Yavam Akasa Medaber is referring to a Shemeres Yavam, meaning if there was a woman that was a Shemeres Yavam to a person's father, the halacha is this man would never be allowed to marry this woman. If she was a Shemeres Yavam to his father at any point, the halach is he's never allowed to marry her. Even after she gets chalitza, let's say, it doesn't matter. He can never be allowed to marry her. And if that's what the pasuk is referring to, then it's v'laver al b'shnei la. Obviously, the pasuk is coming to pile on because we already know that. It's pasha that a person is not allowed to marry a woman that was a shemeres yavam to his father. The reason it's pasha is because if this woman was a shemeres yavam to this man's father, that means by definition she was married to his father's brother, which makes her eshes achi yaviv, which is an erva anyways. So why do you need to tell me that if she's a shemeres yavam, she's also, she's anyways also, even if she was never a shemeres yavam? Because obviously she's married to his father's brother, which is an erva. It's known as eshes achi yaviv. Must be, it's laver olah b'shnei ladim. But the bottom line is, what do we see from here? We see that Rabbi Yehuda doesn't darshan smuchim. Where does Rabbi Yehuda not darshan smuchim? He doesn't darshan smuchim with regards to machashefa loisachaya to teach me that what's the oynish misa of machashefa skilo. But as I said, you know machashefa gets skilo. It says machashefa loisachaya. The samach lei it says kol shoichet b'mehem loisumas. And just like someone that shoichet b'mehem is chayiv skilo, so to machashefa is also going to be chayiv skilo. Rabbi Yehuda said, "Ben Azai smuchim, you're giving someone skila." You're literally going to give the person the most chamas misa in the world based on smuchim. You have to do better than that. You have to have a more solid magar. What do you see from here? Rabbi Yehuda doesn't darshan smuchim. Yet the Zelber Rabbi Yehuda that didn't darshan smuchim says that the halach is an isser of anusas oven, even though the chachamim will not say other anusas oven. Rabbi Yehuda is a machmer. There's an isser for a person to be mezana to live with anusas oven. It's an erva. How does he know it? He knows it from smuchim because you have the parasha of Oinis for samach lei lo yigal knaf oven. Does Rabbi Yehuda hold the smuchim? Does he not hold the smuchim? Zok the Gemara. Ba'alma Rabbi Yehuda does not hold of smuchim. The Mishnah Torah, Rabbi Yehuda does hold of smuchim. Says the Gemara that even Rabbi Yehuda that doesn't hold of smuchim, but by Mishnah Torah he is going to hold of smuchim. In other words, what's the makar that I say is doicha loisa say? Let's go back to the beginning. Rabbi Lazar said, because it says loisa l'shatnis, and immediately afterwards it says gedilim tasalach. Loisa l'shatnis is this shatnis. Gedilim tasalach is the mitzvah tzitzis. Why did the Torah put them together? Let's start smuchim. Smuchim la'ad lo'oid masuim be'emes v'yashem. And it's coming to teach me that if there's a face-off between shatnis and tzitzis, which one takes the precedent? Gedilim tasalach, and that's the makar I say doicha loisa say. But it's all predicated on darshaning smuchim. So the Gemara said, Rabbi Lazar, he holds you darshan smuchim. But the Gemara said, isn't there a shittas Rabbi Yehuda in Shas that doesn't darshan smuchim? Gemara says, yeah, there is a shittas Rabbi Yehuda that doesn't darshan smuchim. But even Rabbi Yehuda that doesn't darshan smuchim, Mishnah Torah, he does darshan smuchim. And being that Mishnah Torah does darshan smuchim, and these two psukim of loisul bashat is gdilim tasalach are in Parshas Kiseitze, which is Mishnah Torah. So we hear even Rabbi Yehuda is going to darshan smuchim. So this makar of asay doichalois asay, the smuchim of loisul bashat is gdilim tasalach is going to work a little bit the kuliyama. It's going to work according to the ones that darshan smuchim. Obviously, it's even going to work according to Rabbi Yehuda that doesn't darshan smuchim, because even Rabbi Yehuda that doesn't darshan smuchim, the Mishnah Torah he does darshan smuchim. So Gishmak. Straightforward, a little long-winded, but the bottom line is we have a makar that I say is doicha lois say. But the Gemara is going to just pause for a second and analyze Rabbi Yehuda's sheet. So Rabbi Yehuda holds that in Bereshis, Shmois, Vayikra, Bamidbar, we don't darshan smuchim. Dvarim, over there we darshan smuchim. Zok the Gemara, but Mishnah Torah my time. What's the reason the Darish, the Rabbi Yehuda Darshan Smuchim. So the Gemara says, Iba Yisema Mishum the Muchach, the Iba Yisema Mishum the Mufni. It's because the Mishnah Torah, wherever Rabbi Yehuda Darshan Smuchim, he felt either there was a hechrich to Darshan Smuchim, he had like a real raya that the Smuchim was meant to be Darshan, or it was based on something that was extra. Mufni means extra in Aramaic. So either it was because he had some sort of hoichacha, it was muchach, or it was because there was something extra. Meaning, it's not just in the Feltarein that a Mishnah Torah with Darshan Smuchim. It's because Rabbi Yehuda held that a Mishnah Torah, he was able to find hoichachais to Smuchim, or at the very least, there was something mufna that allowed him to Darshan Smuchim. And the Gemara is going to explain. As it relates to Rabbi Yehuda's Smuchim that he Darshan in the Mishnah Torah, which was that when it says in the Torah, Yigala Knaf Aviv, it means Anusas Aviv, and he based it on the Smuchim, because the previous pasuk is talking about the Isser of Oynes, if someone's Ma'anas and Isha, that he has to pay a Knas, etc. The Samach Leila Yigala Knaf Aviv. So it says the Gemara, I'll show you where it would have been Muchach in Rabbi Yehuda's eyes to Darshan Smuchim, because the Im came, because if really we're not meant to Darshan Smuchim, why did Torah write Lo Yigala Knaf Aviv? Tucked away. It should have been in the parish of Arayas. Why are we talking about Lo Yigala Knaf Aviv in Parashas Kiseitz? That's what that pasuk is. Shouldn't it be in Parashas Achrim Mois and Parashas Kedoshim, where the Torah talks about Arayas? Why did the Torah write it there? It's Muchach. The Torah put it there for a reason. The location of this pasuk is there for a reason. It's obvious, because otherwise it's in the wrong place. It's not just in the wrong place, it's in the wrong sefer. It should be in Torah's Kayanim. What's it doing in Mishnah Torah? Oh, it's Muchach, literally. Muchach, says the Gemara, that it's here to Darshan Smuchim. What's the Smuchim? Oh, let's look around. Oh, the pasuk before is talking about Ma'anis. No one seems to know what Lo Yigala Knaf Aviv is. This was a major tumult amongst the Tanan. Literally, the Mefarshei HaChumash was struggling to understand what these words even mean. So said Rabbi Yehuda, I know what it means. Smuchim. So it'll be here because it's Muchach, this is going to be Smuchim. Alternatively, it could be because it's Mufna. What's the Mufna meaning? What's extra over here? Because if we're not meant to darshan, there's no reason to even say Lo Yigala Knaf Aviv. Because anything else that it's going to mean, we already know. For example, what the Chachamim say Lo Yigala Knaf Aviv means, it's coming to add an Isser for a man to be boil his father Shemer's Yavam. She's anyways Eishes Achiyav. For anything we're going to come up with, Ayin Rashi, we would already known already. So really it's extra, because it's not really teaching us anything that we don't know. Shmami Namat Tzvi, Lafnuye, it's coming to teach me. So the fact that he's supposed to darshan Smuchim. In other words, again, just to say this, Nachamo, this is not the whole daf. What the Gemara is saying is that Asay is Doicha Lois Asay. I know that. I know it from Smuchim. It says Loisil Vashatnes and it says Gdilim Tasalov. And based on the smichos of these two psuchim, I know that Allah of Asay Doicha Lois Asay. And the Gemara says, like, according to Rabbi Loza, Mishum Rabbi Loza and Azariah, that always darshan Smuchim. Of course, this is a legitimate bona fide Rosh. But even Rabbi Huda, that Alma doesn't darshan Smuchim, but a Mishnah Torah darshan Smuchim. And therefore, these are psuchim in Mishnah Torah. So you can darshan the Smuchim, and that's how you know that Asay Doicha. The Gemara says, 1 second. We have to iron out one more wrinkle. Because we just said that the only time Rabbi Yehuda darshan Smuchim in Mishnah Torah is when it's Adar Muchach, Adar Mufne. Which means if we're going to darshan Smuchim between Leisil Bashatnes and Gdilim Tasalach, it's going to have to be either Muchach or Mufne. So says the Gemara, the Gabi Tzitzis Nami, as it relates to Tzitzis and Shatnes, you could say the same shtickle Torah. The same cheshbon. It's either muchach or it's mufni. The Gemara explains. It's muchach. Tim came because if not, lichteve rachmana gabi parshas tzitzis in middle of parshas kiseitze, tucked away. Kiseitze la milchama leivecha. You're fighting the Yitzhahara, right? You're dealing with everything going on in parshas kiseitze. Mitamul, the Torah decided this would be a perfect time to talk about the mitzvah of tzitzis. Why are we talking about tzitzis now? L'chura, it should have been mentioned earlier. Where's the parsha of tzitzis? It's a parsha shlach. It's what we say in Krishma. So why are we talking about tzitzis now? Shouldn't there have been in the parsha of tzitzis? Now, of course, there are laws that are learned out from Gdilim Tasalach, Shenemo. But any law that we want to learn from Gdilim Tasalach should have been stated in the parsha of tzitzis. Let's learn it where we learn all the other laws related to tzitzis. Why would the Torah have written it in parshas Kisei say, oh, it's muchach. It's muchach that it's coming to darshan Smuchim. What's the Smuchim? Leisil Bashatnes, Gdilim Tasalach, to teach me that tzitzis is doicha Shatnes. Or you could say that it's because it's mufna. How's it mufna? So the Gemara says machdi. Siv or kosav, it says uveged kalayim shatnes lo yalo alech. The Torah mentions the lav of shatnes twice. The first time it mentions the lav of shatnes, is in Vayikra Perikutes. It says Uveget Kalayim Shatnez Lo Yalo Alecha. And then again, in Mishnah Torah, in Parshas Kisei, it says Lo Yisru Bashatnez Tzemer Ufishtem Yachnes. It says the Gemara alone. Why do you have to write it twice? The whole Isra Shatnez is extra. Oh, Shlamim Olaf Nuye. Must be it's extra. Extra to teach me something. Teach me what? Smuchim. This is what Smuchim kicks in. And it's coming to teach me. Lo Yisru Bashatnez. Gedilam Tasalach, that tzitzis is going to be Daicha Shanis. But the Gemara says, no, Ani Mitzvah Tzrichi. I don't think Loisul Shanis is extra. In fact, I need it. I need it to teach me basic laws of Shanis. Because although it's true, it says Shanis twice, Uveged Kalayim Shanis Lo Yalo Lech, and then it says Loisul Shanis. But if you look carefully at the Lashon of the Pasuk, they're different. Uveged Kalayim Shanis Lo Yalo Lecha, Loisul Bashanis. Yeah, loosely translated, they mean the same thing. Can't wear Shanis. But if you look a little more carefully, Torah use different words. Lo yal and lo silbash. And the Gemara says the reason Torah use different words is because we need both of them. Because you can never learn one from the other. How so? Because I would have thought that as long as you put not shatnez on you, it's going to be a problem. Let's say there's a person, he sells clothing. So you would try on the clothing by himself. Like this, people would see it, it looks nice, and maybe they would want to buy it. So you would think, based on uveged kalayim shatnez lo yal that that's a problem. Which is dumya de levisha de isbayana. That the only time it's a problem is if it's a real levisha, it's a chashuv levisha, you're wearing it. And it's only then that it's going to be awesome. So I need a silbash to teach me that it's dafka if there's a real levisha, as opposed to if you just put it on. Now, let the Torah just write loisul. I would have thought after levisha the nafesh haniyasa. Levisha sounds like you're having an excessive amount of anah. But if you're only wearing it in a way where you're not having so much anah, maybe not. So the bottom line is the Gemara says nothing mufna. It's true it says shatnez in the Torah twice, but it has to say it twice. Because one place it says layalo, one place it says loisulbach. I would never know layalo for loisulbach. I would never know loisulbach from layalo. So it's not mufna. So again, the Gemara say that even Rabbi Yehuda doesn't darshan smuchim, but the Mishnah Torah darshan smuchim when it's and therefore he can learn. I say from Klayim Betzitzis. Based on what? Based on the fact that it's muchach or mufna. So muchach, and the Gemara said very nicely. What was the muchach? Why did Torah write tzitzis? And he says he should have wrote it in Shlach. Oh, but what's the mufna? So the Gemara thought, you know what's mufna? The whole Leisil Bashan the whole pasuk is mufna. Because I know Shatnez is written. It's not mufna. That's not true. Torah had to say Shatnez again. Torah had to use the word levish to teach me some very important halachas. So the Gemara says, I'll tell you what's mufna. Not the word loisul bashan is not mufna. It has to say loisul bashan. But in Kim Lichter Rachman loisul bashan. Semer ufishtim lovely. You know what the Torah didn't have to write? The Torah did not have to write semer ufishtim. To write those words were extra. Why? And the truth is, we know what shatnez is. Shatnez is semer ufishtim, and it really only says that shatnez is semer ufishtim one time in the Torah. It says it in Parshas Kisei. So when the Torah didn't have to write, of course I had to write it. How would I know it otherwise? How do you know shatnez is wool and linen? Because it says semer ufishtim. Where does it say it in this pasuk? It's the only place in the Torah it says it. So what do you mean it's extra? It's not extra. Mara says no, mechti. I'll tell you why it's extra. Because it says in Veged, Kalayim Shatnez Lo Yalo Lecha. It says that Shatnez is a beged. The word is beged. The Talmud of Rabbi Shmuel, it was taught in the Yeshiva of Rabbi Shmuel. Even though the Torah is begotten, it says many times in the Torah the word beged. In many different contexts. And there's one place where the Torah specify what beged means. It means other tzemer or fish. You know what that is? That's in the sugyas of tsaras. We know that a person could become a mitzayra, a house could become a mitzayra, and a beged could become a mitzayra. When the Torah talks about a beged that has a nega, it says, quote, "V'habeged ki yeh boy nega tsaras, b'beged semer, oy b'feged pishtim." So it says before in the Torah that beged is other tzemer, other pishtim. So it says the word beged in the Torah again and again and again. And it's one time with the Torah singled out what is beged. It means beged, samurai, beged, pishtin. So taught it to the Rabbi Shmuel, the Yeshiva Rabbi Shmuel, they taught, I've told samurai, pishtin. So to every single time it says beged, it means other tzemer, other pishtin. So I know already that beged means samurai, pishtin. How do I know it? Because whenever it says beged, it means samurai, pishtin. And it says beged, kilayim, beged, kilayim, shatnez lo yalo alecha. So why would the Torah have to write like silba shatnez, samurai, pishtin, yachad? I know it's samurai, pishtin. It doesn't say anywhere Semer Fishtim. It's true, but it says Beged. And Beged always means Semer Fishtim. Is Semer Fishtim because of the Achman? Why did they write the word Semer Fishtim? Oh, it's coming Lafnuye. Those are extra words to teach me Smuchim. So you want to know what's extra? It's not really Sul Bashatnis, it's the word Semer Fishtim. That's what's extra. That's how we know that there's a drasha going on over here. But the Gemara says, no, I disagree. I still need it. You know why? Because it's true, although the Torah never said Semero Fishtim, Torah said a word that means Semero Fishtim. What's the word? Very simple word. Beged. But where the Torah say Beged, regarding the Isn Shatnis of Ubeged Kalayim Shatnis Lo Yalo Alecha. So maybe you would have a Havamina that when it comes to the Isser Halah, which is a more delicate form of Levisha, maybe over there the halacha is it's only Tzemar Fishtim. But maybe if I'm doing Levisha, which is more intense, as we saw in the previous Gemara, maybe there the Issa Shanis is not exclusive to Tzemar Fishtim. Maybe because what I'm doing is more, so maybe it's more Chamor, and maybe even different types of minim are going to be included. So the Gemara says, I would have thought, hello, he delay Nafish Hanah. I know I didn't have that much Hanah over there. It's not Tzemar Fishtim. But Levisha, the Nafish Hanah, but Levisha, we have more Hanah. Cold train mini Aser. Maybe all different types of minim are going to be Aser. Rachmana plus Rachmana. That's why the Torah had to write Tzemar Fishtim. So that's why the Torah had to write Tzemar Fishtim. So it's not actually Gemara says I disagree again. No, because Im Kain Lishtei Kra Mine. The Torah didn't have to say Tzemar Fishtim. I would have known Tzemar Fishtim from Ubeged. It says Beged by Halah. Maybe only Halah is exclusive to Tzemar Fishtim. Maybe Levisha, not? No, because the Tesi Shatnas Me'Allah. It says the word Shatnas by Allah, and it says the word Shatnas by Levisha. And once Halah Shatnas means Tzemar Fishtim, it's Pashat I would know that by Levisha it means Tzemar Fishtim as well. Bottom line is, says the Gemara, how do I know that I say Tase? How do I know that if you have a beggar in front of you, that's shatnez, but at the same time the sitz is on? How do I know that wear it to fulfill the mitzvah Tase? And don't worry about the lois Tase, because the Tase of tzitz is going to be like the lois Tase of shatnez. It's learned out from smuchim. Like silva shatnez, immediately afterwards, getilam tasalach, smuchim la'adla oivim asuyim be'emes v'yasha, v'darshin smuchim. And the Gemara says, even Rabbi Yehuda, that the Alma doesn't darshan smuchim. In Mishnah Torah, darshan smuchim, wherever it's other muchach, other mufna, and this is both muchach and mufna. It doesn't have to be muchach and mufna. Other, right? Ibay Sema means either muchach or mufna. This happens to be both. L'Rav Chada Milsa. It's muchach and it's mufna. It's muchach because if the Torah wanted to tell me the mitzvah of tzitzis again, Torah should have wrote it in the parasha of tzitzis. Why did it write it in parasha Kiseitze? And it's also mufna because the word semer upishtim are extra. Zok the Gemara. Parenthetic from here until the bottom of the Yomid is going to be a digression from our digression. Ton of Rabbi Shmuel. Who holds that wherever it says beged, it means Semer Upish. Time of the Kos of Rachmana, Semer Upish. The reason we said that if a person has a beged that's tzitzis and shatnez, we say, I say you wear the beged, is because the Torah wrote Semer Upish, which was the mufni that Aliba the Rabbi Yehuda would allow us to darshan smuchim and say that I say but without this derash, without this shtickle Torah of epic proportions, I would have thought Tase. Havamina Tase. Rachmana. How can you say that? Read the psukim. V'aksiv it says v'asu lehem tzitzis al kanfei v'gdei. V'tani v'Rabbi Shmuel kol begadim semru fishten. We know beged means semru fishten. The Torah says he puts tzitzis on your beged. What's your beged made out of? You would say anything. No, not according to Tani v'Rabbi Shmuel. He just said that wherever it says beged, it always means Odit Semer, Odit Fishtim. So the Torah basically just told you to put tzitzis on your beged of wool or your beged of fishtim. Okay, now what is tzitzis made out of? The Amr Achmana of a tcheles. Tzitzis is supposed to be made of tcheles, right? We don't have tcheles today. Maybe we do have tcheles today. But regardless, midai raisa for sure, there's something called tcheles. Now what's tcheles? For tcheles amrahu. Tcheles is wool. Anyway, tcheles is wool. Not tcheles amrahu. How do you know tcheles is wool? It's midai sheish kisna. Because being that sheish is linen, bal karchach tcheles amrahu. It means that tcheles is wool. So obviously we need Rashi here. Rashi says it's because we know that the big day kuna were made up of tcheles, argama, telashoni, and sheish. Now sheish is linen. We also know that the big day kuna were made of wool and linen. Nothing else. That's based on a pasuk in Yecheskel, Rashi says. So we know the big day kuna were made of other wool, other linen. We know sheish is linen. So what's tchelas argama telashoni? It could only be wool. It's not linen because sheish is linen. And the only two things that can be made out of, the only two materials are wool and linen. So al karchach, what it is wool. So we know tchelas is wool. And we know that you put tchelas on your beged when you put on tzitzis. And we know that a beged that's either tzemer or fishtin is chayiv and tzitzis. So if a beged of pishtin, because that's the punchline, is chayiv and tzitzis, and included in tzitzis is tcheles, and tcheles is wool, so you see clearly the Torah just told you, the osulem tzitzis al kanfei v'gdeim. Take tcheles, take wool, put it on your pishtin. So what do you have to come out to shtickl Torah for? According to Tani Rabbi Shmuel, it's very straightforward. And in the cheshbon of the Gemara, when it was explaining why, according to Rabbi Yehuda, Tzemer Ufishtim is mufna to darshan the smuchim, so that I would know that he's supposed to put tzitzis on shatnez. It was based on Tanit Rabbi Shmuel. That's why it was mufna. Without Tanit Rabbi Shmuel, it would never been mufna. So it was only mufna because of Tanit Rabbi Shmuel. So the bottom line is that it's mufna using Tanit Rabbi Shmuel. But the bottom line is that according to Tanit Rabbi Shmuel, it's pasha. The Torah said beforish. It couldn't be more straightforward. For us, when tzitzis like kanfei big day, it means semer of fish, and it says take tchelas and put on walls. The Gemara says it's rechanir. I would have thought that maybe, although it says v'asulam tzitzis like kanfei big day, and big day means semer of fish, and the Torah said put tchelas, which is what lav dafki is supposed to put tchelas on fish. How's that possible? It's based on something Rava said. The Rava asks it says hakanaf. It says you're supposed to put tzitzis hakanaf. And hakanaf is mashma min kanaf, that the tzitzis should be made of whatever the kanaf is made of. Whatever the corner, the knep of the beged is made of, that's what the tzitzis should be made out of. So if you're wearing a silk beged, you should wear silk tzitzis. If you're wearing cotton, it should be cotton. If you're wearing wool, it should be wool. If you're wearing linen, it should be linen. Depending on what you're wearing, that's what it should be made of. So you want to know what the strings are made out of? Min kanaf. Except the pasuk also says tzemer ufishtim. It's mashma, it should be tzemer ufishtim. Where does it say tzemer ufishtim? It says loisulba shatnez tzemer ufishtim yachid. Then it says bilim tasalo. So it's mashma that the tzitzis should be tzemer ufishtim. So Rava had this kasha. He said haketza tzemer ufishtim poitrim beimina minchalei beimina. Wherever you have tzemer ufishtim, if that's what the tzitzis are going to be made out of, so that could pater a beged beimina moshlei beimina. It doesn't matter what the beged is made of. Any beged, if you put on tzitzis that are made of tzemer ufishtim, you're good. Sharminim, however, if the beged is made up of something other than tzemer ufishtim, then the mina paichim, if you put on tzitzis that are the same beged, so for example, if you're wearing a cotton beged, you put on cotton tzitzis, it's going to be okay. But shaloi b'minam ain't paichim. However, it's shaloi b'minam, if you're wearing a cotton beged, then you can put on cotton tzitzis. Then if you're wearing a linen beged, you can't put on cotton tzitzis. The only time is that shaloi b'minam is going to work is if it's going to be tzemer ufishtim. But says the Gemara that if Talmid Rabbi Shmuel holds like Rava, then it's muvan, it's understandable. Why? Although it says v'aslan tzitzis al kanfei bigdayim, that you can't necessarily learn from there that tzitzis is going to be doicha shatnez, and it's for that reason you have to come on to smuchim. It's for that reason you have to come on to a whole drasha based on the concept of asay doicha loisase. It's based on Rava Shita. So the Gemara is going to clarify. Right at this point, we're not even explaining it because the Gemara is going to ask and then immediately explain. Great, the Gemara, but Tanit Rabbi Shmuel, let's say the Rava. How could you tell me that Tanit Rabbi Shmuel is based on Rava, whatever this even means? But how can you tell me it's based on Rava? Tanit Rabbi Shmuel clearly doesn't hold of Rava. How do you know that? Because Rava just said that tzemer ufishtim work for all begadim, but hakanaf min kanaf works for a beged that is its own min. Which means, in theory, it doesn't matter what kind of beged you're wearing. There's a chiv tzitzis. It just depends on what exactly the tzitzis is going to have to be made out of. But regardless of what the beged is made out of, whatever the fabric, whatever the material is, there is going to be a chiv tzitzis. Tana Rabbi Shmuel holds that the only time you put tzitzis on is big dayhem. Basel tzitzis al kanfei big dayhem. And what does beged mean? Beged means other tzemer, other pishtim. So clearly, Tana Rabbi Shmuel doesn't hold the Rava. So the Gemara says like this: no, it's what we mean to say is that there would have been a havamina that Tana Rabbi Shmuel held like the diuk of Rava. What was Rava's diuk? When Rava asked this kasha, kanaf min kanaf, and then you see tzitzis head, it has to be made of tzemer ufishtim. It was based on the fact that hakanaf is mashma min kanaf. So we would have thought that maybe Tana Rabbi Shmuel holds of the same diuk, that hakanaf means min kanaf. But Tana Rabbi Shmuel is going to take that diuk and apply it to its own world. What's Tana Rabbi Shmuel's world? It says big day, which means tzemer ufishtim. It also maybe says hakanaf min kanaf, which would mean that although it's tzemer ufishtim, but hakanaf min kanaf. You know what that means? You have to put wool tzitzis on a wool beged, and a linen tzitzis on a linen beged. And if that's the case, the tzemer tzitzis have to go on tzemer, and the fishtim tzitzis have to go on fishtim. How do I know that? Because this is hakanaf min kanaf, which was the yukad Rava. That was Rava's diuk. That was the premise from to ask his stira in the psukim. So I would have thought Tana Rabbi Shmuel holds that, and it's then when I put wool on wool, the chiyavida semer l'tzemer tzave. That's when there's a chiyav to dye it blue. Avol tzemer l'fishim l'tzemer light. Maybe you can't put wool on linen, you can't put linen on wool. So I'm no raya from the fact that it says va'asu lehem tzitzis al kanfei bigdeim that you can just go ahead and this halacha that tzitzis is doicha shatnez, because maybe it's true. It says you should put chelas on, but only on wool, not on pishtim. Doesn't bigdeim mean either wool or pishtim? Yeah, but it also says hakanaf min kanaf, which means that you put wool on wool, you put linen on linen. That's why Torah wrote the word tzemer ufishtim. That feel tzemer ufishtim with fishtim with tzemer. That's the basis why we had to come on to Smuchim, we had to come on to Muchach Mufna, we had to come on to our Drasha. This concludes the daf. The point is that what was the topic of today's daf? The topic of today's daf was Asay Doicha Loisaseh, the first daf of this sugya of Asay Doicha Loisaseh. And even though there was some akuli upshuri and a couple of digressions from the digressions, but if you want to recap this stuff, we could do it literally in 60 seconds. What's the makar that I say is doicha loisaseh? Very important. It comes up everywhere in Shas. The answer is it's learned out because we darshan smuchim. There's two psukim that I mentioned right next to each other. It says loisil bashanis, and then it says Gedilim Tasalach. Like Silva Shanis is a Nissa Shanis. Gedilim Tasalach is a Mitzvah Tzitzis. Why did Torah put them together? To teach me that if there's a face-off between the two, you want to know which one is going to be the Yada El Al Yoina, who's the Kod Alam Gavar? It's Gedilim Tasalach. Mechates, Taisves. But the bottom line is that we learned that Gedilim Tasalach is going to be Doicha, Loi Silva Shanis. And the Gemara says, if you darshan smuchim, this is easy. And even if you don't darshan smuchim, but this is Mishnah Torah, and Mishnah Torah where it's muchach and it's mufna, we darshan smuchim. Where is it muchach? Because why would the Torah write Gedilim Tasalach and Parashas Kiseitze? It's teaching me halachas and hilchos tzitzis, just right in the Parashas of Tzitzis, which is in Parashas Shlach. It's mufni because the word semeru fishtin in Loisil Bashan is our extra. So bottom line is, it's coming to teach me that there's a halacha of smuch. So today's daf again, Tzimdritamu, is the introductory daf to the sugya of a Seiday Chaloisa. So as it relates to really the first raid bite of Masechtas Yevamos, I think it's kedai just to talk divrei hakdama / divrei lamdis / divrei machshava as it relates to asay doicha loisaseh. So zeh klal gadol b'din asay doicha loisaseh. If you think about it for literally a second, it's a pal. What's pshat that asay doicha loisaseh? What's more chamor? Is an asay more chamor or is a loisaseh more chamor? It's a loisaseh. It's easy. Why? If someone's over a loisaseh, in most cases, he's going to be chayiv malchus. In some cases, he'll be chayiv karas. In other cases, he'll even be chayiv misas bezdin. If someone's a mevatel a mitzvah saseh, there's no einish. There are two mitzvah saseh, Pesach and Mila, which are major foundational mitzvah saseh, but there's no einish of karas. But with the exception of those two, every other of the 248 assays that you have in the Torah, there's not even an einish that's mentioned anywhere. Loisaseh, we're hacking, makin, unchin, misas, bezdin. When it comes to asay, there's no einish at all. What does that mean? L'chura. What it means is that a loisaseh is more chomer than an asay. Not just that. We learned the sugyas not so long ago in the end of Masechtas Yoma, where the Gemara talks about the kapara and the darkei atshuva that a person needs to do when it comes to different averos. And in those sugyas, it's clear that a person has to do more tshuva for being over a loisaseh than for aseh. The Gemara says if someone doesn't aseh, as long as he does tshuva, he doesn't have to come on to sigufim, and he doesn't have to come on to unshim and yisurim rachmana litzlan. He doesn't have to come on to misa, but tshuva alone is going to be mechaper. What does it sound like? It certainly sounds like a loisaseh is more chomer than an aseh. So if that's the case, what's Pashup Shat that asay is doicha loisaseh? You would think that if there's a question, should I do the asay at the expense of the loisaseh, or should I do the loisaseh at the expense of the asay? The machriya would be which one is more chomer. Well, if the machriya is which one's more chomer, l'chura every day of the week, the machriya should be the loisaseh. So if that's the case, what's Pashup Shat in the halacha that asay is doicha loisaseh? The emes is that we've spoken out a few times a chiddush from the Baruch Tam. The Baruch Tam, in his klolim of asay doicha loisaseh, it's in Perek Gimel. He says that the truth is asay doicha loisaseh is really a very, very big chiddush. Because it is kasha. A loisaseh is more chomer than an asay. So if a loisaseh is more chomer than an asay, then really loisaseh should be doicha asay, not the other way around. It's a very big chiddush. And he says that being that it's a very big chiddush, ein lecha bai ela chidusha, and you could then understand why you find so many limitations throughout Shas and throughout the world of raid to the concept of asay doicha loisaseh. So it's true on the one hand, asay is doicha loisaseh, but you have to read the fine print. It's long. Number one, asay is doicha loisaseh, but it's not doicha loisaseh v'asay. Asay is doicha loisaseh. It's not doicha loisaseh sheyesh b'karis. Asay is only doicha loisaseh where it's not efshel l'kayim shnei. But if you could do the asay and not violate the loisaseh, asay is not going to be doicha loisaseh. The only time asay is doicha loisaseh if it's be'inna. The two happen at the same second, they're simultaneous. But if they're not simultaneous, then you're not going to say asay doicha loisaseh. If a person was pesheya And because of a pshia negligence, he finds himself in a situation where he's trapped between an asay and a loisase. He looks here, there's an asay, he looks there, there's a loisase, there's no asay, there's a loisase. It's a Tosis and then the Masech Tazerevin. There are many, many limitations to the rule of asay, doich a loisase. Zok the Baruch Tam, why? If asay is doich a loisase, asay should be doich a loisase. Shine a hide. The Teretz says the Baruch Tam, because Allah Rishonim on with star. Really, it's a very big Kiddush. Narvaz, Yevamos daf dalet, the Gemara that we just learned. Smuchim and Atayr Minayim, Shenema Smuchim La'ad Wa'oid Masuyim Be'emes V'yasha. It says, Still Bashan is Gdilim Tasalov. So at the end of the day, we're stuck with a drasha, and it's because of this drasha. The halacha is that I say it's going to be Doichalois Hasei. But it's Chiddush Te'elocha Boy Elo Chidushai. So what you need to do is you have to microanalyze the case of Kalayim Betzitzis, and if it's Doima Mamish to Kalayim Betzitzis, then you can have Asay Doichalois Hasei. But the minute it's not, you're not going to say a Doichalois Hasei because it's a Chiddush. If it makes sense of the Baruch Tam, yeah, maybe we'll apply it very broadly. But because it's a Chiddush, we have no choice. We have to be very stingy with the way we apply it. And that's why there's so many K'darim and there's so many limitations to the concept of Asay Doichalois Hasei. But the emes is that we said the Baruch Tam's a Chiddush. The reason it's a Chiddush is because if you look in the Rishonim and some of the early Achronim, it's mavur that although it's true that Lafum Riyata, a Lois Asay is more Chomer than an Asay, and you would then think that logically and rationally, Lois Asay should be Doicha Asay, not the other way around. But at the same time, there are reasons why Asay is Doicha Lois Asay. The most well-known Maramakim in this discussion is the Ramban. The Ramban, in his Pirush al Torah, it's in Parshas Yisro. The context over there is the Aseres Hadibris. It's the pasuk in the Torah, Zochers Yom HaShabbos L'Katchoy. And the Ramban discusses the fact that in the first of the Aseres Hadibris, it says Zochers Yom HaShabbos L'Katchoy. And in the second Aseres Hadibris, in Parshas V'Schanim, it says Shomer Yom HaShabbos L'Katchoy. And the Ramban discusses the difference between Zocher and Shomer, Zocher's Asay and Shomer's Lois Asay. And then Toich Devarav, the Ramban does what he very often does, and that is he starts talking a little Hoich. Starts talking Kabbalah, Al Derech HaEmes, which is the Ramban's code word for Kabbalah, and the Ramban starts talking a little bit different Kabbalah. And his Kabbalah shmuz, which is above my pay grade, he says that when a person does a mitzvah saseh, what he's doing is he's expressing his love for Hashem. When a person refrains from doing the lois saseh, he's expressing his fear of Hashem. When you love somebody, you're mative with him. You want to make him feel good, you want him to be happy, so you do things for him. When you're afraid of somebody, so you don't do things that are going to upset him. You don't do things that he doesn't want you to do. A mitzvah saseh is an expression of ahava. A mitzvah lois saseh is an expression of yirah. Says the Ramban, ahava is a hecher madrega than yirah. And that's why, says the Ramban, when there's a shayla of aseh doicha lois saseh, you do the aseh, you don't do the lois saseh, because really what the person is being faced with is, should I do something that will show my ahava for Hashem, or should I do something that's going to show my yira for Hashem? Ahava is doicha yira, and because ahava is doicha yira, therefore I say it's doicha lois aseh. If that's the case, why does a person get punished when he violates a lois aseh? Now when he punishes an aseh, so the Ramban says a teretz, ayin shah. But either way, whatever this mahalach is, and again the Ramban is clearly talking al derech nigla, but also intertwining Teras Nisna. So we'll leave it, Pasha, just to say the words of the Ramban without even trying to understand it too much, because again, it's above our pay grade. But Zok the Ramban, that it's based on the fact that a mitzvah saseh is an expression of ahava, a mitzvah lois saseh is an expression of yira, ahava is doicha yira, and because ahava is doicha yira, so it's for that reason, says the Ramban, aseh is going to be doicha lois saseh. There's another mahalach that I heard years ago from Rabbi Yosef Aaron's the Shlita, the Rabbi Alexander Shtibel, Borough Park, and he said it in the name of the Marshan. The Marshan brings from a Kadmoin, a Mahalach Nifla, in why it is that although a Lois Aseh is more Chomer than an Aseh, yet at the same time, Aseh is going to be Doicha Lois Aseh. And that is, we know the rule is that Oinis Rachmana Patre, meaning if a person doesn't have Erev, but he does it by Oinis, he's Patre, he doesn't get an Oinish. Person doesn't have Erev B'mezid, he gets this Oynish, B'shoigig, a lesser Oynish. What if he does it by Oynis? So the rule is that Oynis is Rachmana Patre. Now, Pasha, you learned that Oynis Rachmana Patre means that it's a P'tur Anointion, that if you did something by Oynis, oh, it Chazer, it's Chai Malkus. It Chazer by Oynis, Oynis Rachmana Patre. It tells you, Potter, don't worry about it, you can go home, you can sleep well at night, you have nothing to worry about. You're not going to be punished for it. Why? Because you did it by Oynis. Stating that in the Oivamai Yeshiva to do it, the Reb Chaim Brisker said based on the sugya of Yesh Oines Begitin, which is the sugya at the very, very beginning of Masechtas Ksubis, that Ulanayra Loisasa Dover, Oines Rachmana Patre, is not just a Ptur and Einchin. But the lumdis of why Oines Rachmana is Patre is because when a person does something by Oines, it's as if he didn't do it. Or he did it, but he's not achray for it. Whatever the exact nusach of how you're supposed to say over Reb Chaim is. But Reb Chaim said that Oines Rachmana Patre is not stama Ptur in the Oinish. Oines Rachmana Patre is there's a chsar in the Iker Maisa. Because if I did it by Oines, that type of Maisa is Nishkain Maisa, and as a result, I'm going to be popping. But the lumdis of Oines Rachmana Patre is not so much a halach in Hilchas Einchin, it's more a halach in Hilchas Maisa. That if you do something by Oines, it's a haste that I ever did. That's Reb Chaim's lumdis that he said to explain the Gemaras in the beginning of Masechtas Ksubis in the sugyas of Yesh Oines Begin. That means if a person does something, whatever it is, and he does it by Oines, the halach is not as if he did it. Because if I did it by Oines, it's a haste as a chavas getan. You did it, but you did it by Oines. That's the lumdis of Oines, that if you do something by Oines, it's not as if you did it. What would be, however, if a person had to do something and he didn't do it? He wanted to do something so badly, but he didn't do it. And the reason he didn't do it because he was an Oines. He wanted to go somewhere. He was an Oines. As a result, he didn't make it. So what's the halach? Is it as if he went? No. What do you mean? He only didn't go because he was an Oines. I understand. But at the end of the day, you didn't go. It's Fafalin. Sorry, we apologize. We feel terrible. But Lamaxin, you didn't come. But what do you mean it was only Machmas Oines? I know it was only Machmas Oines. But at the end of the day, I didn't come. And because I didn't come, it's Snehisnish that I did it. If a person does something by Oines, Rachmana Patri says you didn't do it. But if a person doesn't do something, and the reason he didn't do it was Machmas Oines, it's not as if you did it. Oines can say that what I didn't do. But Oines can say that what I didn't do is as if I did. How do I know this? As I state in Rishonim in the beginning of Masechtas Sugah. Zok the Marsham, a dove nifla. He says when a person is stuck between an essay and a lois essay, he looks to his right, there's an essay. He looks to his left, there's a lois essay. He's not sure what to do. Should I do the assay? I'm going to violate the lois assay. Should I say, I'm not going to do it because of the lois assay? I'm going to be mevatel an assay. So says the Marsham, let's make a posh to cheshman. If you're going to do the assay at the expense of the lois assay, you're going to put on the baguette, you're going to be mekayim the mitzvah of tzitzis, but you can do it at the expense of being over the isser of loisil b'shatnis. Are you over the isser of loisil b'shatnis? So the Marsham, no. You know why? Because although you were over the isser of loisil b'shatnis, you did it by oines. What was the oines? I was being Mekayim a mitzvah. So being that I was Mekayim a mitzvah, I did it by Oines. Oines is if I never did it, I was never over the lois assay. What's going to be if the person takes the reverse approach? He's going to say, one second, I can't put on this baguette because I have an Issa Shatnas. So he's not going to put on the baguette because of the Issa Shatnas. He won't be over the lois assay. Will you be Mekayim the assay? You're not going to be Mekayim the assay. Why? Because you didn't wear the tzitzis. You're going to stand on the roof and you're going to say, the only reason I wanted to wear it, I was screaming I wanted to wear it. I couldn't do it. You're right. We feel very bad for fouling. It was machmas oinis that you didn't do it. But if you don't do something machmas oinis, you still didn't do it. So at the end of the day, if I do the mitzvah at the cheshbon of the lois asay, the mitzvah I'm going to get, the lois asay I wasn't over. What do you mean you over the lois asay? No, because I so I don't have the lois asay, so I have an asay. If I decide that I'm going to be mekayim the lois asay and not be mekayim the asay, so I wasn't over the lois asay, I also wasn't mekayim the asay. It's in the back of the envelope arithmetic. Dr. Marsham, of course you do the assay. If I do the assay on the cheshbon of the lois assay, I have an assay. I was never over the lois assay because it was minus. If I don't do the lois assay to be and I don't do the assay, I don't have the lois assay. I don't have the assay. In one case, I have an assay. I wasn't over the lois assay. In the other case, I don't have the assay. I wasn't over the lois assay. It's obvious, of course. You're supposed to do the assay and not be over the lois assay rather than not do the assay and not be over the lois assay. What's the shayla? So the Marsham in the sugya from Yeshoin is begit and lick the shlisel, das the mafteach to why the halacha is that assay is going to be doicha loisay. Dover nifla veruyin advarim u'nishahamah. But there's a third mahalach in the kadmai. We're going to end with this. For why I say is doicha loisay, saying this is a dover nifla advan ma'oid, not just in terms of the toichin, but also in terms of the machshava. And I think it lends itself to really good chizik Now for the beginning of Masechtas Yevamos, and that is in the Sefer Charedim. So just a little bit of a background. Who was the Charedim? The Charedim's name was Rebbe Lazar Eskari. He was from the Gedolim Mitzvahs in the times of Rav Moshe Cordovera, the Baal Toimi Devaira, and the Arizal, and the Beis Yosef, and Reb Shlomo Al-Kabitz, and the Alshich. He was from that Chabura. He's buried in the Pesach Hayim of the Arizal. And the Charedim, he wrote a sefer called Sefer Charedim, which is really a Sefer HaMitzvahs. Incidentally, the Charedim is also the author of Yidin Nefesh. So the Zemira of Yidin Nefesh that Yidin have been singing for hundreds of years, it was written by Rebbe Lazar Eskari. It was written by the Sefer Charedim. So the Sefer Charedim wrote a Sefer HaMitzvahs, and he wrote a Hakdama to the Sefer HaMitzvahs. And in his Hakdama to the Sefer HaMitzvahs, he says the following. Just read a few words. He says, Soid Nela Miroiv Anshes Manein. He said, there's a side that's hidden from most people nowadays. Most people knew this. He said, but what I'm about to tell you now, most people don't know. You do a Kitariak mitzvahs. There's 613 mitzvahs. Hein Ramach Aseh, 248 mitzvahs Aseh, Ushasal Lois Aseh, and 365 Lois Aseh. The whole mitzvahs Lois Aseh, Anshel Mefurish. He says, all the mitzvahs Lois Aseh, the Oynish is Mefurish in the Torah. Mehem Bekaris, Mehem Misa B'dei Shamayim, Mehem Ba'arba Misas Bezin. The Chen Shar Onshim and different punishments. Mitzvahs asay onshim loinis farish b'Torah. But does it say anywhere in the Torah what the oynish is for mitzvahs asay? V'zed hadavar nifla. And he says, if you think about it, it's mamish nifla. Odoin echad amra. One master gave all these halachas. Is lo yonish alois asay, lo yonish al asay. It almost feels like there's no punishment for violating an asay. Person doesn't sit in a sukkah on Sunday. Say here. Person doesn't put on tefillin in the morning. I don't know. He doesn't say kriyishma. Whatever. I mean, that's what it sounds like. There's no einish. I say einish after einish, this einish, that einish, this chum, that chum. When it comes to say we don't have anything, and it doesn't make any sense. He says, if you do a lois say you are over the tzivay Hashem. If you're over an asay, you are over the tzivay Hashem. So what's the pshat? So listen to what the Charedim says. He says, explain this side. We're going to have to be marich. Ki es lekatzer, the es laharich. There are times where you're supposed to be mekatzer, there are times you're supposed to be marich. He says, now's the time to be marich. And I'm going to say this barichas. We're not going to go through the whole barichas. But he says this is an eis laharich. And because it's an eis laharich, try that at the beginning of a drasha. Eis lekatzer, the eis laharich. This is an eis laharich. So he says, I'm going to be marich a little bit now, and I'm going to tell you exactly what's going on. And he starts laying out a few yisoidas. One yisoid that he says is that schar mitzvah b'haya al maleka. Person has to understand that we were put in this world to do mitzvahs. And we were promised that if we do mitzvahs, we were going to be rewarded. But the reward that we're going to get for doing mitzvahs is not in this world. Schar mitzvah b'hai al moleka. And the reason schar mitzvah b'hai al moleka is because this world does not have the ability to facilitate schar mitzvah. Schar mitzvah is so gewalt that you can't get schar mitzvah in this world. Human beings with their frailties and vulnerabilities cannot possibly have schar mitzvah. It's impossible. And for that reason, all the mitzvahs that we do, one day we're going to be rewarded from. But at the same time, it's not in this world. Schar mitzvah is going to be in the next world. He says that's one yesod that you have to internalize in order to be able to appreciate what we're about to say. He says there's another very important thing. And that is that if a person does mitzvahs, the mitzvahs that the person does is going to protect them in the next world from different averos that he did. He says, I know that. It's a Gemara Masechtas Chagiga. We're in Chagiga. This is incredible. Daf Chav Zayin Amud Aleph. That's the last stop in Masechtas Chagiga. Which Gemara? Chagiga Daf Chav Zayin Amud Aleph. The letzte Gemara. The very, very last Gemara. The Hadron of Seder Moed says, the Charedim tells you the whole story. Gives you an appreciation of what's a mitzvah. The Gemara says, quote, we just learned this together. Poishe Yisrael ein urshal gehenim shoylot behem. Even Poishe Yisrael, these are people that did real averes. But urshal gehenim, the fire of gehenim is not going to have any sweet in them. I know Kalbo Charim is be'ach hazav. Umam is be'ach hazav. She'ein olav elok oividin ozav hoyu be'esh harbi kam mishon ve'ein urshoylot behem. We don't have to go through the Gemara again. Poishe Yisrael, shemalei mitzvahs kirimoy alachas kama v'kama him choroya, says the Charedim. The Gemara says that Poishe Yisrael, that Malay mitzvahs can remind, so the remind and the mitzvahs that they have is going to protect them from the Ur of Gehenim. So he said, you see what a mitzvah is? Number one, schar mitzvah, the schar from a mitzvah, you can't even get it on this world. Number two, not only will a person be rewarded for a mitzvah, but The person's mitzvahs are going to protect him from Dina Shal Gehenna. It's the last Gemara in Seder Mayid. Because the Malaya mitzvahs kirimah, and mitzvahs protect the person from Gehenna. So after these two akdamas and the arichas of the Charedim, says the Charedim, once you understand this, you can understand Lomalo in this parsha Anshe Mevatel mitzvahs. Half of the Torah didn't discuss the oynish of someone that's Mevatel mitzvahs says. Listen to what the Charedim says. He says, you want to know what the oynish is for not doing a mitzvah saseh? The oynish is that you're just not going to get the schar you would have gotten had you done the mitzvah saseh. That's the oynish. And he says if a person would understand what an oynish that is, he would understand why the Torah didn't give any other oynish. Because it's come maybe there happened. Doesn't need any more oynish. That's the greatest oynish that a person can possibly get. He says the oynish for an aveira is finite. Mishpat Rishon begehenim. Yud Beis Chodesh. It has an end. It has a gvul. So he's going to have a bad day, a bad week, a bad month, a bad year, an ipiyah. At the end of the year, it's over. He's done. Mishpat Rishon begehenim is Yud Beis Chodesh. Einshim are finite. A person gets malchus, got 39 malchus. You give him 40th, now the bezin starts getting malchus. You can't. It's finite. There's a cheshbon. A person's taken away from this world. He got Mises Bezin. Okay, he would have lived till he was 120. So he got Mises Bezin. He missed out a little bit. It's finite. The loss is defined. But schar mitzvah is infinite. Schar mitzvah is lenetzach nitzachim. A person doesn't get schar for doing a mitzvah. That's mitzvahs. You're every single second of every single day of every week of every month of every year. And a concept that we as human beings can't even fathom what that means. It's going to be a loss. So what are you going to tell? Oh, in addition to losing out, you're also going to get malchus. It's like a litzonis. It's nothing. It's no sheiches. It's pasha that has no chashivus. Not teifus mokum at all. And that's why there's no einish for asay. The reason there's no einish for asay, zok the charedim, is not because asay is less, it's more. You know it's more? Because think of the schar. What's the schar for a mitzvah's esse? The schar for a mitzvah's esse is mamish, it's gewaldig. It's lenetzach nitzochim, it's endless. The einish for a lois asay is finite. It's something that's mugbal. The schar of asay is much more than the einish of a lois asay. Says the Charedim. Once you understand this, you can understand why the Torah didn't mention any oinshim for us. It's not necessary. It's pasha. It's a chaval al azman. The oinish is the fact that you didn't sit in a sukkah. You know what? You're not getting schar for sitting in a sukkah. Believe me, you're going to regret it one day. That's what the Torah is saying. You didn't sit and learn Beseder. It's fine. You know that everyone's a ben chayrin. But at the same time, you're going to miss out. Shmeisin, the guy you're shmeisin. Abalamaisi, you're going to lose out. You're going to lose out. And that's the biggest oinish in the world, that a person enters a world of netzach nitzachim where he understands he could have had more, and because he didn't do mitzvahs, he's going to end up with less. There's nothing that even compares to that. That's forever. That's nitzchias. That has no zman, it has no shear. That's why zok the charedim asay is doicha lois asay. Says, you want to know why asay is doicha lois asay? Because when a yid's mekayim and asay, he gets schar netzach nitzachim. And when a person's over a lois asay, mishpat misham begehenim is Yud Beis Chodesh. This is an oynish, but the oynish is mugbal. The oynish has a gvul. It's mesuyim to a certain time and to a certain shear. And that's why at the end of the day, if you want to know which is chomer, yeah, it feels like a lav is more chomer because the lav you get malchus, you get oinshim, the f you don't get oinshim. Oh, must be it's not such a big deal. Zok the Charedim Talmud of the time of the Vayra and of Darizal, he says just the opposite. He says the reason there's no oinshim for naseh is not because it's not chomer enough. It's because das lane that the yid was mevatel the aseh is such a big deal. It doesn't require an oynish. It doesn't need an oynish. That's why there is no oynish. Not because it's so kal, fakert, because it's so chomer. And they not doing the aseh is not the greatest oynish in the world. And because that's the greatest oynish in the world, that's why it's not necessary. And that's why I say is doicha lois aseh. So just to end, again, we're starting now a festa masechta with words that we've spoken out so many times from the Vilna Goyim, but it just segues so beautifully, and that is the Mishnah says in the beginning of Masechtas Peah, and we say it every morning in davening, Elu dvarim she'ein lahem shir, haPeah v'abikurim v'harei oyon, u'kmilos chasadim v'salm l'Torah. And the Mishnah says, Elu dvarim she'ein lahem shir, not lemala, not lemata. And the Vilna Gaon, in his Shlois Elio, in his Pirush on Masechtas Peah, says that Talmud Torah has no shir l'mayla, but Talmud Torah also has no shir lemata. Meaning, there's no shir l'mayla. Yid should learn as much as he can learn, but at the same time, there's no shir lemata. As little as a person learns, he's Mekayim a mitzvah. Says the Gaon, what does that mean? Every teva, every word of Torah is a mitzvah. So says the Gra. If you think about that idea of Elu Dvarim She'ein Lahem Shir, Lamala and Lamata, and included in that is Salmud Torah, and then you continue the Mishnah. Elu Dvarim She'adam Eichel Pe'erisan B'Adam Mazavah Karen Keyemes L'Olam Haba Knibur Aveimu Gmilos Chason V'Avah She'od L'Olam L'Chaveiroi the Salmud Torah Keneged Purim. He says, if you think about it, it's not shayah. That means, says the Gaon, Talmud Torah, every word of Torah is a mitzvah. Elu Dvarim She'ein Lahem Shir, even Lamata. So even one word of Torah is a mitzvah. And what kind of mitzvah is it? It's for Salmud Torah Keneged Kul. It's the biggest mitzvah you can do. So listen to the words of the Vilna Gaon. Okay. Kishaloi made Lamoshel Daf Echad. Said the Vilna Gaon, if a person would learn one daf, Mikayim Kama Meis mitzvahs. Think about how many hundreds of mitzvahs a person is going to be Mikayim. That's the chizuk. The chizuk is that a person learns a mitzvah, you get schar lenetzach nitzachim. The schar mitzvah is so gewaldig that the Torah didn't even have to punish a person for not doing a mitzvah, because the punishment is dos alein that the person is going to lose out. The person's not going to get the schar. But when a person learns, a person does mitzvahs, he gets gewaldige schar. Schar that even Poishe Yisrael ein urshal gehenim. We learned that last Gemara and say the Gemara. We didn't even realize what kind of chizik licked in Yana Gemara. The end of Snei the Moed, at the end of knocking for 2+ years, the Gemara said, Omar Reish Lakish, says, you want to know what you just did for the last 2 years? Every doctor learned, like the Gaon said, is hundreds and hundreds of mitzvahs. Not just mitzvahs that have a Salmud Torah Keneged Kulam. And if every one of these mitzvahs makes the person Malay mitzvahs Kerimah, and Malay mitzvahs Kerimah means he's going to get schar lenetzach nitzachim. And not just that, it's going to protect him from Urshal Gehenim. This is the biggest schar, is the greatest thing a person could do. What better way to walk into Hadron Allah State the Moed, Hadron Chalon? What better way to start Masechtas Yevamos? But either way, that's the third mahalach for today of why it is that I say is Docha Lois.